I used to think the worst thing a man could do was lie. But then I watched my best friend slowly vanish without him ever raising his voice or laying a hand or even walking out the door. She didn't disappear all at once. It happened in inches. The bright, funny, whip-smart woman I knew started second-guessing her jokes, her clothes, her words, her worth. And the man she loved, he said things like, "You're lucky I'm not the cheating type. You're not really the type men cheat with." Like it was honesty, like he was doing her a favor. This isn't a story about one big betrayal. It's about 1,000 little cuts that felt like love, until they didn't. Today, we're telling her story from the outside looking in. The banter that wasn't funny, the scorecard that replaced intimacy, and the final line she left on the kitchen counter that said everything he never listened to. And if you've ever watched someone you love shrink for someone else's comfort, or if that someone was you, then stay with us. Because some stories don't start with once upon a time. They start with, "I didn't realize it was a problem until it was." Everyone has a story that changed them. If this reminded you of yours, tell it, anonymously, through the pinned link in the comments. We'll share it with care, so someone else feels less alone. And for every 1,000 views, we'll donate $1 to help women rebuilding their lives after emotional abuse. Because healing starts when we stop keeping quiet. The first time I met them, it was at a friend's engagement party. You know the type. Tiny twinkly lights, overpriced cheese, the whole "we're adults now" vibe. She walked in wearing this navy blue wrap dress, the kind that looks casual until you realize only smart, stylish women can pull it off without looking like they tried too hard. Her name was Riley. He followed behind her, Ben. Tall, polished, that quick wit people confuse from emotional intelligence. The kind of guy who always knows where the bathroom is at any event, and somehow that's charming. Together, they looked solid, like the couple you'd see on a financial planner's billboard, happy, healthy, investing in their future. At dinner, he'd reach for her hand across the table, crack jokes about her terrible parallel parking. She'd roll her eyes but smile. You'd think, wow, that's love, teasing but sweet. They were the kind of couple that made you want to believe in the whole thing. Love, partnership, someone who just gets you. But what I didn't realize then was that sometimes the teasing is one-sided, and sometimes the smile is polite, not delighted. They looked perfect from the outside, but what no one saw were the rules. Who got to speak and when? Which stories she was allowed to tell? How funny stopped being funny when it was always at her expense. And that's what this story is about. How something that looks healthy can be quietly, chronically cruel. Because not all wounds leave bruises. Some just wear a navy blue dress and smile through the ache. It always started with a laugh. Not a belly laugh, not even a chuckle. Just that polite, close-lipped kind of laugh women give when they're not sure if they're supposed to find something funny or not. Ben would say things like, "Good thing you married me. Not many guys would go for your whole anxious chic vibe." Or, "Come on, Riley, who would even cheat with you? You don't exactly scream temptress." Then he'd grin like it was a joke, like she was in on it too. And Riley, she'd smile, that quick, practiced smile, the one that doesn't reach her eyes, the one that says, "If I act like it's fine, maybe it will be." I noticed it during a brunch once. He'd made some crack about how she finally wore makeup, must be for someone else. She laughed, lightly, reached for the toast, but her hand trembled when she picked up the knife. The comments were always wrapped in humor. That was the trick. If she got upset, she was being too sensitive. If she brushed it off, he'd keep going, like her silence was permission. It's emotional erosion. Not one earthquake, just 1,000 little cracks that weaken the foundation. And the worst part? They don't show up on Instagram. They don't scream. They whisper. Until one day, the person you love stops looking you in the eyes, not because they're angry, but because they don't recognize who they've become. And if you asked Riley back then, she'd probably still say, he's just joking. But even jokes have weight, and some of them land like stones. Let's talk about this idea that it's just teasing. Because there's teasing, and then there's tearing someone down slowly enough that they start handing you the bricks. What Ben was doing, that wasn't banter. That was erosion. You know the difference. Banter feels mutual. It makes both people smile. Erosion feels like a slow leak you didn't know was happening until the floorboards give way. When he says, "You're lucky I married you," and you laugh but your stomach sinks, when he makes a jab at your looks, then wraps it in a wink, that's not harmless. That's strategic confusion. This is what we call refined gaslighting. It's not the obvious kind. No one's flipping tables or yelling. It's softer, slipperier. It makes you question whether you're being too sensitive, whether you're imagining it, whether maybe you are lucky someone even wants you. That's not a partnership. That's a slow burn manipulation, the emotional equivalent of water wearing down stone. Words matter, especially the ones said with a smile and a side eye. So if you're ever wondering, am I overreacting? Try flipping it. Would you say that to someone you love? Would you say it and mean it kindly? Because the people who chip away at you in private often look like Prince Charming in public. And by the time you realize you've been carved into a smaller version of yourself, they'll say, "But I was only joking." That's not love. That's erosion, disguised as affection. And it sets the stage for everything that follows. Just wait. We were at this cozy little Italian place. Low lighting, warm bread, the works. It was supposed to be a double date. You know, wine, pasta, casual conversation. She started telling a story, something about a client pitch gone wrong, but hilariously wrong. She was animated, gesturing with her hands, doing the voices. We were all smiling, until he cut in. "Wait, that's not exactly how it happened," Ben said, mid-sip of his wine. "What she means is, the client wasn't mad, just confused. She always exaggerates." She laughed, sort of, tried to keep going. But 2 sentences later, he jumped in again. No, babe, let me tell it. You're missing the point." And just like that, her voice got smaller. She sat back, nodded, let him finish. The story turned into his. The punchline became about him stepping in to save the day. I caught her eyes across the table. She gave me that tight, practiced smile, the one that says, "Don't make a scene, it's fine." But it wasn't fine. Later, when the table went quiet for a second, he looked at her and said, "See, when I want you to speak up, you clam up. Classic." It hit me then. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a ventriloquist dummy. Pretty, silent, supportive, unless he needed her to nod in just the right places. And what made it worse? He thought he was charming, like we were all in on some inside joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was control, packaged in charisma. It was the first time I really saw it, not just in what he said, but in how she shrank every time he spoke. That dinner, it changed everything. For her, I think it was the moment she realized silence wasn't peace. It was survival. And once you notice that shift, you can't unsee it, especially not with what came next. It started as a joke, like most red flags do. One day after dinner, he said, "Remember when you forgot Mom's birthday last year? 1-0. She laughed, a little confused. He smiled. "Just saying, I always remember your family stuff." She thought he was just being cheeky, but then came more moments. "Didn't do the dishes after I cooked? 2-0. Canceled our date night for your friend's party? 3-0. It stopped being funny when she realized he wasn't kidding. He was keeping score. Every mistake she made, no matter how small, became an invisible tally on some emotional spreadsheet. A forgotten text, a misinterpreted tone, a slow reply. And each one added up to, "You owe me." That's when the shift happened. She stopped doing things from love. She started doing them to cancel the debt. She apologized before he was upset. She over-explained simple choices. She second-guessed every sentence. Because love stopped being a space to be human and became a courtroom where every word could be Exhibit A. She once told me, half laughing, "I feel like I'm down 8-3 and I don't even know what the game is." That wasn't a relationship. That was a silent competition where only one person made the rules, and the other kept losing just by existing. And the worst part? He always said, "I never said you had to make up for anything." Of course not. He didn't have to say it. He just made her feel it. And that's how scorekeeping works in toxic love. You never see the scoreboard. You just feel the pressure to win a game you didn't agree to play. It was supposed to be a moment of honesty, a turning point, a gesture of trust. He came home from a 3-day work trip, quiet, thoughtful, stirring his coffee like it owed him answers. Then he said, "I need to tell you something." She braced herself. "I almost cheated on you. But I didn't. I stopped, because you deserve better." She sat there, frozen between heartbreak and gratitude, not sure which one she was supposed to feel. He called it honesty. He called it accountability. But then he kept going. "I've just been feeling so disconnected, like I'm not seen anymore, like you make me feel bad about who I am." She blinked. Wait, so now it was her fault? He almost cheated. He didn't. Gold star. But instead of sitting in that discomfort, he handed her the blame, wrapped in the language of emotional need. That wasn't a confession. It was a manipulation with a bow on it. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted to reset the scoreboard, to make himself the one hurting, so she'd forget that he had almost torn them apart. And here's what her best friend said to me later. "Wait, he just said, 'I nearly betrayed you,' and then followed it with, 'You made me feel like I had to'?" That's not vulnerability. That's deflection. That's weaponized guilt. Sometimes what sounds like honesty is just a monologue in disguise, crafted to make you feel sorry for the person who almost hurt you, so you never notice they still might. The comments section lit up faster than a group chat after a breakup. One viewer wrote, "At what point did love become an emotional debt trap?" Another said, "This isn't marriage, this is prison with a dinner plan." And then came the flood, people sharing stories, raw, unfiltered, painfully familiar. "My ex used to keep a list of everything he ever did for me, every dinner, every ride, every birthday gift, just so he could bring it up during fights. My partner used to say, 'I could have cheated, but I didn't, so maybe say thank you,' like fidelity was a favor, not a baseline. I didn't even realize I was scared until I felt safe again. That's how subtle it was. And suddenly, it wasn't just her story anymore. It was everyone who'd been in a relationship that felt like a negotiation, where love came with invoices, where affection had a price tag, where your mistakes were receipts and your silence was currency. The comments became a community, not of bitterness, but of people saying, "Hey, I've been there too. And more importantly, you're not crazy." It turns out conditional love has a pattern, and once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee how many people are still living inside it. That's why we tell these stories, so one person's truth becomes another person's mirror, and maybe, just maybe, a doorway out. I didn't notice it all at once. That's how these things usually go. But one day I realized she hadn't told me a funny story in weeks. The kind of story that would make her laugh so hard she'd slap the table and say, wait, let me start over. She used to wear this bold coral lipstick, even to brunch. She said it made her feel a little obnoxious in a good way. Then one day, it disappeared, along with the coral and the brunch and her need to be even a little obnoxious. She started saying things like, I don't want to cause a scene, when she used to be the scene. Or, it's fine, I'm just tired, when I knew she wasn't, not that kind of tired. And I remember thinking, I guess she's just maturing, settling down. But now I know she wasn't settling down. She was shrinking. You see, emotional erosion doesn't leave bruises. It leaves revisions, tiny edits to the person you used to be, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the silence in your own smile. There's a word people don't use enough in relationships: dimming. Not because of age or life, but because someone keeps flicking the switch every time you try to shine. And she had stopped laughing because the cost of joy had become too high. There was no screaming, no dramatic exit, no storming out in the rain with mascara running and suitcases flying. That's the kind of ending movies give you. But real life, real endings can be quiet. She woke up one morning, folded her sweaters into a single carry-on, and opened her journal. She didn't write about the betrayal or the silence or the worn-out versions of "I didn't mean it." Instead, she wrote down every little phrase, every seemingly harmless jab, every offhand remark that had chipped away at her confidence one comment at a time. Page after page. Em mà lấy được anh đấy. Em đâu đủ hấp dẫn để ai muốn ngoại tình. Lúc cần nói thì im. Anh thấy lạc lõng. She didn't write to remember. She wrote to let it go. And on the very last page, she wrote, "You once told me I wasn't attractive enough to be cheated on, so I'll leave you with something truly irresistible, the echo of your own loneliness." Then she zipped her bag, set the journal on the kitchen table, and walked out. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally started loving herself more. Everyone has a first heartbreak, but it's what we do after that pain, how we grow, how we protect the next version of ourselves, that defines us. She could have let it break her, could have let it harden her, but instead she chose something bolder: clarity, boundaries, self-respect. This wasn't the story of a woman wronged once. It was the story of erosion, of compliments with splinters, of apologies that circled back to blame, of love that turned into a scoreboard. But more importantly, it's the story of someone who woke up, who saw the slow fade not as failure, but as a signal. You don't have to lose yourself just to keep someone else. If you've ever been made to feel like you're a burden just for being yourself, if your laughter faded, your sparkle dulled, and your love became a debt, you're not dramatic. You're not too sensitive. You're not alone. Let's call this what it is: emotional captivity dressed as commitment. And let's talk about it. If you have a story that changed your view on love, we want to hear it. Share anonymously through the pinned link in the comments. We'll select stories to retell, with permission and privacy respected. And for every 1,000 views, we donate $1 to organizations helping women reclaim themselves after emotional manipulation. Because love should be kind, not calculated. And stories like yours, they change lives. See you in the next video.